Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you have enjoyed looking at the fantastic art here today, and it really does show that a picture can tell a story. The incredible contribution of the participants in our research, and some of them are here today, shows that we are at a pivotal moment in terms of how we think about food, health, and personal responsibility. For many years, public health messaging has focused on individual choice, encouraging people to eat better, to cook more, and to make better, healthier decisions. And while these efforts to increase personal capacity are well-intentioned and they are part of the solution, we now know from the evidence that trying to eat healthily in an environment that doesn't support that is like swimming against the tide and simply does not work. As Joe said earlier, our food environment is everything around us that influences how we eat, and that environment is dominated by cheap, heavily promoted food that is high in sugar, fat, and salt. Unhealthy food is available everywhere, not just the supermarkets, not just the takeaways, but in petrol stations, in bookshops, in leisure centres, and online, and can be delivered to your door in minutes. In such an environment, healthy eating becomes the harder choice. It's not about willpower. People haven't changed, but the environment has changed. And that's why Safe Food has made this deliberate and necessary decision to shift our attention away from individual behaviour change to changing the food environment. Protecting children, of course, is at the heart of our work. Today, 1 in 4 children in Northern Ireland and 1 in 5 in Ireland are living with overweight and obesity. Those in lower income areas are, of course, more likely to be affected. These children are at risk of chronic diseases like type 2 diabetes, like cancer, like heart disease. They have illness earlier, and they have significant emotional and social impacts, including stigma. Children are, of course, uniquely vulnerable to the food environment. They are targeted relentlessly by marketing on their screens, in shops, near schools, and many recognise unhealthy food brands before they can even read. It's not a fair fight. Children can't shape their own environments. We can, as adults. And that places the responsibility on all of us to ensure that the environments that surround children support them, don't undermine their health and well-being. Both in Ireland and in Northern Ireland, we have recognised obesity as the most significant public health challenge we face. And important progress has, of course, been made, from food school standards and sugar taxes to reformulation and calorie labelling. The Healthy Future Obesity Strategy Framework in Northern Ireland places strong emphasis on the food environment, with pillars relating to place, to settings, and to the whole systems approach. In Ireland, the department is also in the process of developing a new iteration of the obesity policy. And Safe Food's Food Environment Roadmap and Forum provide a coordinated all-island platform for engagement to accelerate progress and build on existing commitments. But we also need the public to succeed. Citizen engagement, as we carried out here, is more than just consultation. It means actively involving people in shaping policies and services and environments that affect their lives. People understand better than anyone how the food environment affects their communities and their families. By listening to citizens, we build trust, we improve policy design, and we create solutions that are fair, realistic, and publicly supported. This engagement was about giving people that space to reflect and how to reimagine a healthy food environment and what it would look like, and crucially, where do we start with all of this? What we heard was a clear, consistent message. Things have to change. People want change. Across communities, north and south, citizens told us that the current food environment makes healthy choices harder, not easier. There was strong support for stricter regulation of unhealthy food marketing. People want healthy food to be the default in public spaces like this, in schools, hospitals, sports clubs, and leisure centres. They wanted the local food landscape to change. They want supermarkets and takeaways to redesign so that healthy food is more visible, more affordable, and unhealthy food less apparent. And you've seen lots of images to support that. They wanted clear information, fairer pricing, and policies that put children first. People were not just willing to accept the change, they were calling for the change. And this is quite simply the appetite for change. This citizen engagement work has shown that people understand the problem, they share a common vision, and they want leadership and action from us. Our task is now to honour those voices, to translate the vision into meaningful, sustainable change. By working together as a group, government, communities, partners, and citizens, we can create a food environment that supports health, protects children, and makes healthy choices easier for everyone. And I am really looking forward to hearing what our magnificent panel is going to say on this later. But first, I'm just going to have a few words from Dr. Ruth Doyle from MCO, who coordinated this work. Thanks, Ruth.
Hello everyone, and thank you for that, Aileen. As Aileen said, my name is Ruth Doyle, and I'm joined by my colleagues Antonia and Ellen here today, and we work for a company called MCO. So we're a strategic design and project management company, and we work across health, sustainability, and the cultural sectors. So we were absolutely delighted to have the opportunity to work with Safe Food on this citizen engagement programme. It's been a hugely gratifying experience for myself and the team, and it was really unique in its approach in that it married innovative techniques with really kind of rigorous evaluation and robust outputs. And for us, that's like the ideal way to do public engagement, so it was a privilege to be part of it. And I would like to thank everyone who took part and gave so generously their ideas and their time and shared their hopes and their concerns so kind of honestly and openly with the team. And I think that's reflected in the magnificent illustrations you see here today by Steve Doogan. He brought all the ideas together in real time with great humour and wit. So there was no workshops where we weren't cracking up looking at some of his illustrations. I think it's a serious issue, but he's really, really illustrated some of the opportunities that are available to us. So thank you, Steve. I think he's, he will be beavering away in a moment. Capturing some of the discussion today. So we hope you're as energised as we have been in being part of the process. So with that, we'll hand over to Marie-Louise Connolly, who's going to chair our panel discussion now. Thank you.
Thanks very much for inviting me to be part of today. It's brilliant not to be standing outside a hospital or in a GP, interviewing GPs. One of the reasons why I decided to accept this event today was because it is so different and it's exciting. And it's what we all should be talking about, which we are, the video says it. And I think when we're out and about, even doing the shopping, I was on the Ormer Road on Saturday. The local butchers had closed due to high rates. And there was a group of people just facing the Erigal, I'm product placing here, and people were saying it's a real shame that the butchers is going, that there isn't another butchers on the Ormer Road. We now have a couple of bakeries, but the only place now is to go up to the big supermarket. So what we need to do here today, which is what we're here to do, is to get this conversation out of somewhere like this and all the different communities that you've been, bringing it to the people who make a difference, who make the decisions, and that's, of course, up in the hill and the assembly. Not a politician here, I don't think, am I right? I call it out every time. The politicians do not come, and you know, we all want it to happen, but they're not here. So that means we need to shout louder, and we will shout louder, because children want it, all the communities want it, and it's up to them to help make it happen with our support. So to our panel, Ciaran, if you would like to come up. I'm trying to remember the names here. Jenny, Amelia, and Helen. There, I did it. Menopause brain. So if you'd like to join us, thank you very, very much. It's a global topic, and it's great that Northern Ireland is now engaging in it, as we can see from the video and everybody that's here today. each of you, you're all very welcome. We have had a bit of an introduction. They are so passionate. They have so much to say on their chosen topic. It's a bit like Mastermind, that, we could have a couple of hours here today. The food environment, comprising the availability, affordability, and promotion of food in our surroundings. Something that we can see in Steve's drawings. It really brings it to life. And I know we've been asked to one takeaway for the tree, but you could really pick up on several takeaways. My thing that I have thought of was healthy food in hospitals, because when you go to those vending machines, it's just chocolate and crisps, and we're meant to be in a healthy place such as a hospital. So that's one of the things that we can talk about today and how we make that happen. Dr. Amelia Lake, would you like to say just a few words about yourself and what makes you passionate about this subject, food environment?
Okay, thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be here in Belfast today. I sound like I'm from here because I am, but I am based in England at Teesside University, which is in the northeast of England, which also took a battering from the weather yesterday, but not quite as bad as here. I've been working in the food environment area for more than 20 years. I have been mostly interested in how we can better shape our physical food environment, so change the spaces that we move in and using existing legislation, like looking at planning. But also, increasingly, we're now moving into a space where our food environment is also digital. So those phones that we hold and are so attached to, they also have a food environment within them, and they are making less healthy food even more accessible. And when we think about the food environment, we need to think about it through an inequalities lens, and the fact that the less healthy food is the cheapest food, and it is more expensive to eat healthier, and you need money for electricity.
Okay, Amelia, just a sentence or two, Ciaran. Why are you passionate about what we're here to talk about today? Just a sentence or two.
Was that not passionate enough?
That was passionate, so passionate. Ciaran,
Okay, so
just a few
myself.
sentences about why you want to talk about this subject, why it's important.
Well, it's important for a variety of reasons. My background is economics, and in economics we look at how people respond to the incentives that are actually presented in front of them. And it can be that food choices are influenced by things being cheap, and part of the reason why they're cheap may be that the full cost isn't actually reflected in it. So as an economist, we look at those and we look at the consequences of them for us as individuals, but also more broadly in society. So it's like a playground for me to be working in. I get to use my tool set to study how humans behave.
Jenny, what are you bringing to the table?
Well, my passion is health inequalities and the idea that poor people have poor diets and poor health generally, and that's unfair. And again, to the point that we can change that, and we do have the power to do that. My background's in nursing, and when I started, it was very much a fix-it. People get sick, I fix them, and that was the trade-off. And when I began to move to work in the community, I realised it was the cause of the causes that we needed to address. And the food environment is that poor people have poor food choices, and I think there's a policy incentive that we need to challenge.
Dr. Helen McAvoy, your passion.
My passion. I suppose one of the main things I saw from the artwork today, and also from my work in the areas of tobacco and alcohol and gambling regulation, is that there's this huge power differential between commercial industries selling products that are not necessarily good for society and good for individuals. And I think I'm really passionate about redressing those power differentials, getting the power back to the people in terms of the choices that they can make around their own health and well-being.
Okay, so let's go. So the format is we're going to have a bit of a chat among ourselves, and you're going to listen in, but towards the end of it, it's going to be a Q&A. So please, whether it be on your phone or a bit of paper, if something comes into your mind and you're going to ask a question later, you will have time to do that. The questions are, no offence, the questions are, Q&A is usually the best bit. So, Amelia, it does seem to be top of the agenda now. Let's face it, we're here today. You've spent the past year working on it. Why are we talking about it more?
I think simply because we know it's the cause of so many long-term chronic health conditions which have a knock-on economic effect in terms of the NHS. So it's getting to the top of the agenda, but something that you mentioned when we came in, those policymakers aren't necessarily in the room. However, this is a very powerful document. This wasn't written by policymakers, this was written by members of the public, and they are setting their agenda, and that aligns with lots of agendas of many people working in this area. So the FSA, both in Northern Ireland and then Safe Food in Ireland as well. So there are many agendas that are matching what the public want, and that is powerful.
Jenny, you work in the heart of the community. And I know we all, at night, sitting around the dinner table, we're all chatting, to our families and friends. But the communities that you're working within, what are they telling you about the weekly shop? And those barriers that are there, that are preventing them, whether financially or for whatever other reason, to get to the healthier food and to avoid that fabulous tunnel that Steve pictured, that we all go through once a week and you pretend you're not in it, the tunnel of sweets and crisps and bad things. What are the communities telling you? How difficult is it?
It's very difficult, and we really have empathetically listened, and we've asked the right questions, and we're not judging because we do understand, and we're, as parents and anybody that's shopped, we understand. You talked about the food environment and the road that you walked. Again, it's changed in the village that I work in. There was a supermarket, and there was one off licence, and there was a supermarket, and there was a shop, there was the butcher's, and there was a fruit shop. Now the supermarkets and 2 petrol stations both actually sell alcohol. So there's all sorts of additional things that when people didn't buy alcohol with their food in the past. So there's all sorts of different, the food environment has changed. Time poor as well. People are saying that they're time poor now. And to a stage that people have become de-skilled and lack confidence. When we asked, we started with a food programme, we asked parents, we said, what exactly do you want? And they actually identified, they said, look, we have childcare, registered childcare until the child is 12. And then the child comes home alone, and we're working, we don't get home, the child is there. It's something that's quick, it's convenient, the cafe's next door. So when we began to find collective solutions, one of them was a home from school cookery programme where the child and the parent came together, and they actually created the food together, and the crack was mighty. And it was really a challenge things because the parent was saying, well, I wouldn't let him with a knife, he'd take his digits off. And I was saying, oh God, I hope he doesn't. But it was that idea that, and oh no, he wouldn't eat that until they do. So it's the idea of listen to people, and people have to trust you to tell you, look, my child is coming home and there's nobody there. And they need to trust that you won't actually, the first thing you do won't be to judge them for that. That is the reality.
Helen, when did things start to change? I've talked about the butchers going now and other local shops. Is there any sense that we are going back to that way, or have we lost it completely?
I don't see any evidence that we're going back to that way.
How might we get it back?
I think there's 2 things, and it builds really from some of the key recommendations that came out of the consultation and the views of the people who were involved in the workshops. There were 3 words that together drew my attention, and those 3 words were make a law. So there is clearly a need for regulation and law. I don't think we can expect the largest amount of change from the people who have the least power within the system. So I think we do need to now look at significant legislation and regulation to move our food environment to make that healthy food more accessible and affordable and so on. So the community said make a law, and I think we really need to listen to that.
Ciaran, this is where you come in, making a law. Usually things happen if there is a financial argument for it, as we know well, not just in Northern Ireland, but everywhere. If the finances can make a law be activated quicker, we know that will happen. So you're the man with the economic head on. We know that fast food and the processed food, all of that seems to make the rich richer. So is there any good economics behind the healthier option?
Some of the cost of our unhealthy choices is actually hidden. And part of the work that Safe Food do is to help to shine a light on that by commissioning research. So some of the work that Safe Food have commissioned in the past has looked at the cost of obesity or the cost of unhealthy diets through salt or whatever. And we've attached monetary values to those. And those monetary values politicians do actually recognise and do interact with, because when you put a pound sign or a euro sign in front of something, it grabs attention. It's a language which everyone speaks. So for example, in Ireland, the cost of obesity, we estimated back in 2009 to be over £1 billion, over €1 billion, and it's gone up in the intervening period. Similarly, when we look at the cost in Northern Ireland, it was over €500 million. And a lot of that was related to the health service, so the illnesses which arise from our unhealthy choices in relation to diet, but also they're actually related to things like absenteeism from the workplace. So if someone's sick, they may not be able to work, and that means that they're not able to contribute to the exchequer through taxes and things like that. And then there's also presenteeism.
How much can we blame that on obesity, or not even obesity, but just illnesses that are linked to non-healthy food?
So our estimate was that in relation to use of healthcare, it was about 40% thereabouts of that overall price tag was related to healthcare from diseases related to obesity. And there's a wide range of different diseases that people may not actually think of that are related to obesity. So when people think about obesity, they might think about type 2 diabetes, or they might think about cardiovascular disease,
stroke.
But also stroke as well. But also a number of cancers are actually linked to obesity. And you move beyond simply obesity into a whole range of other conditions, such as mental health, which is also related to some of the stigma around obesity and things like that.
And that's something that Jenny touched on earlier, that isn't it the stigma that can be associated with families and children about how they look, what's in the lunchbox, you know, what did your mummy put or daddy put in your lunchbox? Is that such a thing, or do children not really care?
Oh, it absolutely is. Kids want to be just like every other kid, you know, really, they do, and they don't want to be different. And there is that toxic parenting as well, where somebody's judging somebody else's food choices without knowing what's happening in that home. So absolutely, there's that's the reality for people. And instead of, I have to say, even myself, you say you're guilty of it. I was in Iceland one day and I saw a lady in front of me with their trolley, and I was sitting there like a health professional going, my goodness, look at the state of that trolley and what's in it. She got to the top and it was £26. I thought, that's why. Yeah. That's why mum's going to Iceland. That's why the food choices are there, because they're affordable. So, rather than judging people, to support them and support the environment around them as well.
And Helen, in order to get those prices down, as Jenny was saying about that trolley, and it's usually 2 for 1, isn't it, for the less healthier stuff. And I think one of the signs is banning 2 for 1 for more processed foods. How do we flip that? Is there evidence that we are starting to, or can we make more healthier food affordable?
Yeah, I think so. As part of our work supporting the Department of Health in Northern Ireland in the development of their new, of the recently launched obesity strategy, we did a review of different laws and regulations internationally, and what these regulations were, whether they worked, whether they didn't work, and so on. And I guess the universal thing is that internationally, we're not moving forward fast enough on getting these regulations in.
Why is that?
There's huge opposition from various commercial parties against regulation, and that has to be strategically addressed. We need political leadership. We need advocates.
Are you talking about the ads that we see around Premier League, the big games that we see when those ads pop up, and you think of the audience that are tuning in to watch the big football games, and you see the strap lines going around advertising, whether it be alcohol or sweets or chocolate. Can you imagine that instead of the chocolate bars that you might see, healthy fruit bars being advertised? Can you visualise that?
I can visualise that. I think, I know in the South we're running a Stop Smoking campaign linked to the Premiership at the moment to try and target male smokers. So I think these things are all possible. I think there's never the same amount of resource to run an advertising campaign for public health than there is in these quite profitable companies. And I think what's really needed is a kind of a basket of measures. Obviously, we need to regulate the industry-led marketing so that it's not unfairly targeting children and young people, and it's not being so pervasive on their online in their digital worlds as well as in their real.
It's not their fault.
It's not their fault.
We're trying to move it away from...
But I also think there's fiscal measures that we can consider in terms of incentives for people to eat healthy food, so in terms of free or subsidised fruit and vegetables. And I think it's actually probably a basket of measures. But I think if we sit and we wait for the evidence for other countries to do this, we'll be waiting forever. I mean, the industry doesn't wait and say, geez, I wonder if this marketing strategy will work. They try it. If it doesn't work, they drop it. I think we need to try, take the best evidence we have a set of measures, introduce them, see how it goes, and take it from there. But I think the argument that there's never enough evidence to show that they work is not good enough anymore.
It's not. And Amelia, in order to bring those set of measures, your shopping basket, up to a government, up to the MLAs, to say to them, would you put that on your strategy for whenever you're going out to gather votes? What do you think the appetite is for that? So when they're standing on their doorstep, they're talking about the food environment.
Exactly. So something I learnt not very long ago was that when the Labour manifesto came out, energy drinks came on it. That's an area I've done a lot of work in, so I was very pleased to see that. And that was the most popular item on their manifesto, is what we've now been told, which is mind-blowing, but there you go.
And minimum alcohol pricing as well. It is very much on our agenda, Ciaran. You must have been cock-a-hoop to see that being on the manifestos.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously we do have an unhealthy relationship sometimes with alcohol, and the minimum unit price has been shown to work in different contexts. And similarly, I mean, some of the other fiscal measures have been shown to work. So, for example, the tax on sugar-sweetened beverages, introduced both north and south at the same time to avoid some of the problems related to shifting stuff across the border, has been shown to, or at least evidence is emerging to show that it has been very good at reducing our consumption of sugar and impacting upon obesity as a result.
Yeah,
and dental health.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Evidence around that
is food,
it's getting stronger and stronger, but we can't keep waiting for evidence. We need to be brave and act. And some countries, particularly in South America, have been very brave, and the black hexagonal marks on food that's unhealthy. And maybe we just, we were brave when it came to the sugar levy, and we just need to see a bit more bravery.
You mentioned there about countries who are getting it and where those messages are hard-hitting. What else is happening that... Something that struck me last year, Public Health Agency in Northern Ireland, they don't have a budget for advertising. That has never come back since before COVID, and that's really unfortunate. If the public agency, Public Health Agency, their job is to educate us with posters, and they don't have a budget for that now. Learning from other countries and having takeaways from what others are doing, are there examples where you're saying, we could do that. That wouldn't cost a lot of money. It just requires a bit of imagination and drive.
I think, as Helen says, it's a whole basket of measures, and there's no obesity, and the complexities of the food environment show that there's no one silver bullet, and it's things like fiscal measures. So on one hand, putting on taxes, maybe exploring extending that, which we're now going to do around.
But does that win votes?
No.
Tax is a dirty word at the moment, so that does not win hearts and minds, and no politician wants to talk to us about
But
tax.
I wonder, it's a bit like Steve's pictures. Their messages are so strong. If you get the public talking more to politicians and saying to politicians on the doorstep, well, actually, I wish you would do something that would discourage my children or me to eat less sugar. So it's about what we're talking about here today. It's engaging the public more, isn't it? And that's something that we all need to do, and we need the politicians to do as well, Ciaran.
Yeah, I agree entirely. I mean, one of the things that can be done, and I don't think the politicians would object to it, is consistent information in relation to what is in the food that we're eating and some of the consequences of it. We've seen this work in relation to tobacco, for example, where the prevalence of smoking has gone down because there has been a series of measures.
We're almost bombarding the
ramped up.
public
Yeah.
with it, and the message is finally getting through.
It is, and this has been shown to pay dividends. But I think here, again, going back to one of the things which was said, the sort of the power to the people, it's about supporting people in making the choices that they want to make but are sabotaged in making, whether it be through marketing or whether it be through pricing which doesn't reflect the true cost of the goods that we're actually consuming.
So Helen, you know, your area has been with cigarettes and alcohol. Would you like to see it being applied to food? A good thing that has emerged from social media and from the scrolling is I've learned an awful lot more from influencers about food labelling and what I should be looking out for, and that has taught me a lot. In your world, would you like to see the same laws, sense of messaging that we see with alcohol and cigarettes applied to food, or is that frightening the public too much?
I think some of the principles can apply, but I think each product has its own unique set of measures that's needed that are specific to that product. But I think there can be learning there from the regulation story around those different products. But I mean, everyone has to eat. Not everyone has to drink or smoke a cigarette.
You can't say to a child,
yeah,
smoking's bad for you, you know, eating's bad for you, because that is sending completely the wrong message. So it's trying to get that message worded in a healthy way and a way that doesn't frighten children.
Yeah, I mean, I think the onus is really on the food producers, the food labelling, the menu labelling. I think it's on the system to make those changes. I think, obviously, it does have value to educate people about the food, the health value of this food versus the health value of that food. But it has quite a limited effect size in terms of the choices that people make, because your choice is made by the environment that you're in and the price and all that sort of stuff. So
colours,
the colour,
what even hires
the packaging is beautiful. The ads are so clever.
Yes.
They're so engaging. You know, I mean, we'll never compete with the very best advertising minds in the world work for the food industry.
Yeah.
So,
and whenever a new restaurant opens, one has opened recently near me on a certain road, and very quickly people started talking about the portion sizes from this particular restaurant, that the portion sizes are huge. And they were saying that before they talked about how good the food was, but it was just the fact that portion you know, portion sizes were big.
Well, I think at the moment, like if you order like a child's portion size, it's actually an adult portion size is the child's portion size, but you can't order the child's
And restaurants
portion size,
don't like being asked, can I have 2 starters instead of a main course? So it is, why I'm bringing that up, it's about changing the culture, isn't it? It's you talked about dentists.
I mean, restaurants can
everybody.
offer a half portion. I know a few of them that have done that. Can you say, can I have a half portion? They charge a half. But I think it's at their discretion. I don't know that that's a standard, you know.
I don't know either, but I know. Jenny, changing the culture from, can you think of one of the communities that you're in, that you're very proud that culture is either changing or has actually changed, and you're using them as an example to educate others?
Well, yeah, I can actually. I'm thinking of our peer mentors. We have every summer, I think, holiday hunger is a huge thing for me. The fact that our children for 9 weeks don't have free school meals, and the impact on the shopping basket for families is massive. So every summer, we run 9 weeks of services for kids. The post-primary school young people are actually peer mentors. And we found with them, you know, what the marketing to young people is just appalling. Do you remember a number of years ago, Prime? There was a drink that sold out everywhere.
Yeah.
Literally, I mean, it was like You know, it was sought after. They were selling bottles of it.
But it was expensive, which...
Oh yeah, but the face value of it was it was being sold for 4 times the face value because it was so, but it was really clever marketing. So it's just how we actually, and even with the dietitian in our team, when she's actually saying, do you know what's in it? You know, and actually educating people and giving them facts, because in the past, and we might laugh and say, oh, aren't those kids silly, you know, smoking that. I remember my mother, who is also a nurse, telling me that my Auntie Mary smoked consulate because they were menthol and good for her chest. So, you know, we needn't get off our own high horses. Give people factual, correct information. And you're right, the marketing in that. I mean, that was a lot of social media traction on that too. It was influencers. And this was, you know, it looked like toxic waste. I don't know if you've ever seen it. So we were actually giving people correct information. As well, we were trying to nudge healthy eating and not doing it in a way that was preachy or teachy. So we were finding, even though we had free food, the young people wanted to go up to town to get an energy drink and whatever. And we were actually...
Sausage roll for breakfast.
Absolutely. Why? Well, we were saying why. You know, why when there's free food you want to do that? But they wanted to assert their independence. They wanted to be cool. They wanted to go up with their ARC T-shirts on. So then we began to actually listen to them, and we actually taught them how to make sausage rolls, but a healthier version. Then we put the equipment there for them to make wraps, and we actually trusted them. So we had to change too, and we had to stop judging, because they were making choices based on the influencing that was happening to them.
That's a brilliant example. You know, that just changes the whole tone of the conversation, and it's putting power and the decision making among young people, because if they feel that they're in charge, well then it'll roll out and they will pass it on to the younger generation. Is that good economics, Ciaran? Is there money in that? Or is there money in the chip van down the road who is attracting them with a chip and a burger for £3?
I think there's probably money in both and a place for both. But educating young people in what is good choices and supporting them in making the good choices, I think makes perfect sense. My teenagers were very much caught up in that prime, to the extent that I was hunting through supermarkets trying to find this.
So you were part of it?
You're part of it.
Yeah. Now I've lost my train of thought. But I think...
So we were saying about the economics of really healthy food. You know, how can a tuna and salad wrap compete with a burger and chip?
From my perspective, the taste is enough to stay away from the burger and chip. But maybe for the for the children.
But it's how we sell it, isn't it? And that's what Jenny said.
I think it is.
They flipped it, and you put the power back in the lap of the young people.
And to go back to the point that you were making about the PHA and its advertising, and when you were talking about the sports arenas, I mean, you have Gary Lineker advertising Walker's crisps. Maybe we need to have some of our celebrities maybe fronting up some of the healthier choices which are available.
Yeah, we'll get Barra Best with a fruit basket. Yeah, well, he is a very healthy eater. Yeah. It is really, it's so interesting. And I think every single one of us here, and you'll have your little postcards to take away with, and it's about, you know, spreading that word. And if that word is being spread and there's positive messaging, what are the loopholes, Helen? Are there many loopholes, many barriers?
I think there are many barriers. I think, you know, speaking specifically about the law side of it, and I was speaking to Amelia about this around the new advertising legislations across the UK, including like the broadcast watershed and various aspects within that. You know, there is an intention with the law, but by the time it goes through the process, people have taken a few chunks out of the substantive, or there's lots of exemptions, or this food wants an exemption, or that, you know, this piece and that piece. So it's very hard to maintain the integrity of a law from the beginning to the end. There will always have to be some compromise, and that process is a political process around how much compromise you are willing and where you are allowing that compromise to come from. I just want to make a comment more broadly, just in terms of learning from the pandemic, when it was all a bit different in terms of the shopping that we were doing. Our lives were very different. Physical activity was different.
We had time to bake at home.
And I think we did see some increases actually in childhood overweight and obesity. And I think the industry and the marketing shifted very quickly. you know, in terms of what, I think it was just really interesting to look at the food environment. I think we should be ready for the next pandemic.
Please God, no.
Whenever that arrives. I'm not in the health protection side, but I think we should be ready in terms of
What
having
do you think?
resilience.
There was positives that come out of the pandemic in terms of better eating because we were at home more. We could
No, I don't think there was, and I thought there might have been. There was in terms of physical activity.
Corner shop wasn't it?
But I think in terms of the buying our food online, which is what people did, they were more pulled into the marketing,
Drinking
price
more alcohol.
promotions than they might have been through
Yes.
in store. And I think the second thing is, which was never, I don't think has been fully understood, and was not something that I had predicted, was we knew that people who had chronic disease, maybe people with long-term disability or people who had respiratory disease from smoking, we knew they wouldn't do well in the pandemic. What we didn't see coming was how poorly people with obesity did in terms of deaths and serious illness in the pandemic. That was quite shocking in terms of the risk, the extent that acted as a risk factor for people getting seriously ill during the pandemic.
And the other thing that the pandemic did was just supercharge the digital food environment. So it was already growing, and this isn't a Northern Ireland or an England, this is a global issue, and this is being controlled by companies that are not European or English or anything, they're all US companies. So there's a massive global issue around an environment that we have very little tools around which to control and legislate, and that horse has bolted and it's away, you know.
So do you feel, Amelia, that your industry or your background, you're constantly paddling upstream?
I think what happens is that, as Helen alluded to, it takes so long for these things to go through, which is fabulous. That say we have the advertising restrictions, but now trying to say, okay, that's fabulous. However, what we need to think about is, you know, you've got kitchens that are maybe one kitchen, but there's 7 different types of food coming from that one place. So your food environment has mushroomed, but you don't know that it's there. You know, how can we quickly turn our tools that we have to deal with that mushrooming environment?
Well, let's turn our attention to that for the next couple of minutes about how we make those either tweaks or major about turns. And I'll just start off with Ciaran, sorry, go to you first, and the others have time to think about it. You know, to try, whether it's to change the culture, to change the tools in our kitchen, I think if people have an economic incentive, let's face it, if we think we're saving money, it's a good enough incentive to do that. Is that easy done? Is that a case of, again, getting the supermarkets on board? If you live on a street, that you get the local shopkeepers on board? How do we do that?
In relation to changing consumer behaviour, I mean, fiscal instruments have been shown to have a role to work up to an extent. And again, I would allude to the tax on sugar sweetened beverages. But sometimes people don't just need a nudge, they need a whole shove to overcome the incentives which are being provided from the other side. And that's, again, to go back to the cigarette example, it needs to be a range of different measures applied in a gradated format to help support the choices which people probably actually do want to make. But bits and pieces, they'll struggle.
And that education, for the likes of many of us in this room, while we try to make the changes, but if you're trying to educate the younger generations, children in schools, then you have to get the schools on board and the teachers on board. And teachers are telling us, we've already got enough to do, we haven't got time. Then there isn't the money to pay independent people to go into schools. So it's back to the home again, isn't it? And then it's back to the billboards that children are seeing, trying to change that mindset that, hey, it's cool to be seen to be eating fruit on the football pitch or the netball pitch or whatever, and it's trying to change those mindsets. Amelia, have you any evidence of that? I know you're here to talk about Northern Ireland, but you do look further afield.
Yeah, so I think there's a general anxiety that the restrictions on TV and online are going to push more and more into the outdoor advertising space. But we have got evidence in England and in Scotland and Wales where more and more local authorities themselves, so this is not being nationally driven, this is within local authorities, are looking to ban not just unhealthy food, but also gambling and also things that have a large carbon footprint. So that is happening in local authorities. And
But not here. Who can talk to me about sort of Belfast City Council? Sorry, Amelia, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go on ahead. So you were saying there about other, council areas in England, but I immediately thought of, well, what is Belfast City Council doing?
But what we've been looking at that and trying to evaluate and capture what's happening, and our conclusion is that actually this is fabulous to have this grassroots from the local authorities, but they are facing lots of opposition and lobbying and all those other commercial determinants, and that actually sometimes you need both that top down and bottom up to come together. And
Sorry, and where is that opposition then coming from? Are you saying it's on the street, in the public?
no, commercial. People who might supply the advertising, for example, but also the people that are advertising on it. And things like bus shelters. Local authorities have entered into 30-year contracts. We were talking about vending and the issues with procurement and vending and the long contract. 30 years. And then those companies own the bus shelters. So there was a time where they were changing contractors, and in the in-between bit, they actually went and removed the bus shelters, so there were no bus shelters. So it's real, there's lots of kind of little bus shelter politics that, are quite mind-blowing, but this affects people, and these are in mainly low-income areas, and it's usually kids in those bus shelters seeing those ads. But yeah, if we, there is now that momentum, so it would be amazing to see that repeated both in the north and in Ireland as well.
Jenny, lots of your people would be in bus shelters.
We don't even have buses, let alone shelters. I have to think, I know it's a bit grim, but I think we've massive opportunity, because in the past we were subject to such commercial determinants in terms of the advertising, and now with social media, anyone with traction can, and I actually, what I'm seeing is I am seeing a subtle change in communities with young people's attitudes towards health, and it is changing. I think they're more healthy than the generation before. So I think we need to maximise that and be really smart now. But I think we need to get complex message about food safety and healthy eating, and we need to put it in simple language. Health literacy is a huge issue. I think we stop complicating things and make it simple. I heard something yesterday about BGs, about beans, greens, grains and seeds. Let's use simple messages to put forward complex ideas, and trust that our young people, when we give them good information, that they will make better choices. Has anybody been watching this on Channel 4, What Not to Eat? And it's massive now. There's huge traction on that. And it's about jumping on those messages, and when we see them, actually saying, here's what you can do. And what can we do in terms of, I know even in our centre, because we feed kids over the summer, I know what I've learned is we do not buy bananas on Friday, because if there's a black on the banana, they won't eat them the next week. We buy the bananas on Monday. So there's simple things, that make a difference, because we're looking at, okay, the only thing they'll do with them then is banana bread, which is probably full of sugar. But, be smarter and react, and trust in a way that with the right information, they will actually make smart choices.
Yes, I think they do. And Helen, I'm sure you've seen evidence of that too. That we're not dissing young people, and we're not dissing the families as part of this campaign. It's about removing that sense of self-responsibility. It's actually a societal problem.
Yeah, very much so. I'm thinking, going back to that power differential, a child is a child growing up, and they don't has to make mistakes. Lots of them in adolescence, I'm learning. And I think it's unfair to expect all of this change on the child. The child has to navigate the system. The child has to make the right choice. The child, they have to be guided, obviously, by their parents and their families and their communities and so on. But they also have to live in a system that supports that more broadly. So, I think sometimes we maybe need to lift the gaze from the people who are, maybe not enjoying a healthy diet, maybe struggling with their weight, and lift our eyes and look at, well, who is actually behind that ad?
Yeah.
What's that campaign about? Where's that come from? Why is that logo on that? I think a little bit of lifting the head and looking at that is not a bad thing.
And that audience that you've just mentioned, they're often the hardest to target because of their weight or their health. They're not leaving the house. And it's trying to tap into that. I'm involved with a group of women at the moment who are going through menopause, and they think because of hormones, and it is partly because of hormones they've put on weight, but actually it's not. It's more too because they're not moving. They're not moving enough, and it's trying to not use what we've learned, not use the word exercise, but use the word move. Just even if it's move to the end of the street, move to go out and see your friends. Don't take the bus. If you can, walk. So it's about the language as well, isn't it? And talking to that audience in a way that they want to understand.
Yeah, and I think, although we're talking about a broad public health issue, your body weight is intensely personal. It can be linked with your body image, your self-esteem, your sexuality, a whole load of different things. Like, this is really deep stuff.
It
and
is.
I think, to respect that in the way that we communicate and the way that we talk is really important. And I think especially for this generation of children and young people, where we see some deterioration potentially debated around sort of the mental and emotional health of our kind of 16 to 25-year-olds. They struggled a little bit, particularly during the pandemic, on a background of maybe some deterioration in mental health anyway. So I think this, I'm not saying obesity is the only factor in there, but I think it is a factor.
We can learn so much from the pandemic.
Yeah, and I think, physical health, eating good food is good for your mental health and your sense of agency and control in your own life. So I think that we've, I guess my message there is that overweight and obesity doesn't sit on its own. It's integral with our mental and emotional well-being, our self-image, our confidence, our sex lives, all of these things, So I think it's really central piece that we need to take seriously.
What I'm sort of feeling here today, it's almost as if there's a blank sheet of paper. And I know an awful lot of work has gone on already behind the scenes to get us to this point, and all of you in your respective subjects. But there is a real opportunity here, isn't there, to leave today? I said at the start, I think it's very exciting. That's why I came here today, because it's different from the usual hospital waiting lists, all of that. This feels like could be not a brand new conversation, but it's a conversation that we could really, really build on to make a difference. So now is your opportunity. We've talked enough, we've talked too much. I even interrupted, sorry Amelia. Who is going to ask the first question? Hold on, we do have a mic. Sorry.
I might start singing now. I've been
Karaoke.
for Springfield White Rock for the last 16 years. And my question is today that I find that the people struggle to find or afford healthy options. And I just want to know from today which is going to be the easiest idea, which is going to have the most impact quickly.
Who would like to take that one? Jenny, can I put it to you? You're the obvious one to kick off.
You're absolutely right that people do, and there is this fear as well. And I know the communities, and particularly the families that I'm dealing with, they're thinking, well, if I buy that and the child doesn't eat it or doesn't like it, I can't replace that. So there's a real pressure not to get something that you're not going to eat or like. Now, some of the things we've started to do is introduce people maybe to foods they haven't considered before, but put a community worker, somebody that's very much of the people, who's doing the cooking, and then the dietitian is there as well. And we're actually, with real people, offering solutions, because some foods that actually are quite affordable are actually healthy. But if you don't know, and if you worry that the child won't like it, and a lot of our groups, I've heard, no, they're not going to eat that, and then you're just watching, you're laughing as they wolf it down. But it's taking that risk and introducing people to concepts. And again, some people haven't confidence to. One of the things we did was to bring the event right to the middle of the community. We brought a food demonstration right to the heart of Community Festival, beside the chip fan and the candy floss, and we were doing the foods, and we gave people the bags with the ingredients, and we had a voucher for the butcher in the bag as well. And people said, well, I haven't gone to the butcher because I don't really know what to ask for. So it was easier. And the thing is, people are going, well, the supermarket's cheaper, but the supermarket you were coming out spending a load of money and you hadn't something for the tea. Whereas when you went to the butcher, you know, you had. So it's actually getting down, listening to people, doing what you've been doing for years, and you know, immersing yourself in what people are telling you, and just, you know, again, I suppose, look at, you know, is the butcher dear, or is it you're only buying your meal? You know, per pound it might be, but you have to walk past all these other things on your way out. So it's, do you know what I'm saying? It's introducing, and the fact that somebody said to me they hadn't the confidence to go to the butcher's because they'd always gone to the supermarket. And, you know, would they look at them or would they judge them? And
Is it a case of also you have to speak out loud in the butchers and there
that's
could be a queue of
confidence,
people?
yeah. You
of
have to
people
say,
behind
you have to speak, and
Yeah.
you don't have to in the supermarket. So there is something about you finding your voice.
Can you tell us something about what you're doing in your community, or overall what your people are telling you when it comes to food? If you just need to hold it up to
Yep.
your mouth.
It's just that you mentioned there about the council, and over the years they've planted trees in the local parks, and it's just when you're in the community you get to know stuff like this. But we then got a group together and we were foraging for the fruit and everything, you know, low-hanging fruit, as they say. But we made chutney, and we made jams, and we made obviously homemade apple cakes and stuff like that, which went down a treat. But we do run other slow cooker programs. The incentive is if you take part, you get a free slow cooker to take home with you. Come along to the groups, prepare the meals in terms of chopping and so
Very
on,
good.
portion control, and bring it home and put
Very
it in the slow
good.
cooker. So we do our best, but I understand with regards to the money and stuff like that, visual things work really well. Like, for example, if people could see this amount of sugar that's in a bottle of Coke,
Yeah.
they may be inclined to go, my sugar intake's supposed to be 6 grams a day, and look at the sugar in this. And
Because people don't know.
they don't know that's
Yeah.
a thing, and it's just the labelling.
And it's very visual because you stuck the sugar cubes on the back so you can
Oh,
see
yeah,
straight
yeah.
away. And even the ketchup.
I know.
You know, it's
the sugar that's in.
And
so
does
much
your
of the sugar.
community, are they yearning for information? Do they want to know? Did it take a while for maybe the first year you held it, and then the second year there was a bigger uptake in places because by word of mouth the message was spreading, this is actually quite useful?
Yeah, it is, and they love to know, you know, and because the walks that we also do, then we're foraging, going, wonder, is there anything in here we could take, you know, and bags of stuff, you know. But the Take 5 message that we also use within our groups as well is about, you know, going out and about connecting with people and
Yeah.
learning new things and everything. So it works well for us, but they just love to know new information.
that
and
that
take
connection
messages.
thing, yeah, that making friends, that
talking.
group, yeah.
Talking. Aileen,
We've had a look at what's written on the apples, everybody's ideas that spoke most loudly to them, and they're all nearly different. There's 2 for vending, apparently, so well done to the FSA. But they're different. And I suppose in that context of the variety of solutions, bearing in mind that this is a highly complex problem, where would you begin, I think, is what I'm asking. And probably to each panel member, if you, not a easy one to finish there.
right, we'll go with yourself first at this end. Where do you begin? My goodness.
Where do you begin? I think build on the assets that you already have in national law and in national policy and within your communities and so on. So I think building on those assets that are already there is probably, you know, an important thing. I think the second piece, obviously, I'm biased because it's my sort of topic interest, is that I do think we do need to have some regulation and law at national level, and some guidance for local authorities and local councils and local systems to support the community action around this. So that pathway, I think, is very important. And I think there is probably something that has started to happen anyway around empowerment, around the conversation around body weight that came from a ground up perspective. I think we need to listen very carefully to that and where that wants to go. So I think without that sort of community voice and empowerment piece, we probably won't get the drive. We'll probably have a lot of aspirations, but not a lot of momentum. So I suppose that's my perspective.
Jenny.
I would agree with the build on the asset, particularly in communities where you can actually go in and have most impact by really empathetically listening rather than singular individual lifestyle approaches and blaming people for poor choices. That's not going to work. I do think there's an opportunity with the children as well. I know you say, Marie-Louise, that schools haven't time to do it, but somebody needs to, because I know we would have never recycled in our house, but the kids were the little place that actually, you know,
Turning the lights off.
They changed our behaviour. Yeah. So I think if you can, they are receptive at a certain age to messages, and they will shape their homes.
They do.
They really do.
They really do. Amelia.
Health in all policies. Health is the responsibility of every department in the local authority and the national government. It needs to be there. If you're a planner, you need to get your head around, actually, we're planning for not just a beautiful place, but a healthy place. If you're trading standards, you need to think about health. Everything needs to think about health and not working in silos, but working across disciplines, across professions, with that focus on, be it children's health, but promoting health and reducing inequality.
That's what Mike Nesbitt, the health minister's message has been from the word go, that why should he fund, you know, because health is something to do with infrastructure, it's to do with education, so he shouldn't be landed the bill for everything. And you mentioned there about the planting of trees and that connection to food. So that's across a couple of departments, isn't it? So it is, as you say, not working in silos. Ciaran.
As something which could be done, I'll not talk about economics because then it'll get very boring and you'll all fall asleep again. But creating a space for education of children, as in cooking with their mother or cooking with their grandmother, so they can be educated into what is good food, how to prepare that food, and the food becomes fun. So you're educating and spending time with your kids at the same time.
Some of the old-fashioned ways were the best ways, weren't they? Are you going to ask a question? Hello.
I'm Claire, and I grew up in the North Belfast area. I was part of one of the groups that were involved.
You were on the video?
My question is, and this has been touched on, but what are the practical steps that we can take as people on the ground to build a healthier environment despite the challenges and the barriers that are there? You know, what can we do now whilst we wait for the policy to change?
Jenny.
I think we can always do something now, and I think, you know, maybe small steps to create big steps, but there is something about Marie-Louise's first point about there's no politicians in the room. Maybe we need to be local and we need to be nudging that direction as well, so we can make steps in our own lives, but we should be, next time they go to our doorstep, ask them, you know, in relation to, we were discussing a new school campus and there's nothing barring all the fast food outlets from co-locating around it. You know, nobody seems to, you know, that's not an issue. If we make an issue and, you know, you're not going to get elected if, you know, if this doesn't happen, maybe there's power in that, and maybe we need to take a little bit back, because I think too often it's been assuming that, the assumption that the fault is all with the communities, and we're saying, you know, you're a legislative assembly, legislate.
Claire, can you imagine one day, soon, very soon, you'll open your door and one of them will be standing on your doorstep? You be ready with a question, because in the next couple of months they're all going to come up and I would love to hear what question you would put to your local MLA or the local office, because you have a brilliant voice and you're so articulate. So you get your questions ready and you sit upstairs and look out the window. When you see them coming up the street, you just happen to open the front door. Well done for speaking up. Great. Yes, what are you going to say?
Sorry for jumping the queue. I thought the mic was just here, so I might just take it over.
Go on ahead.
So my name is Agrippa, and I'm originally from Zimbabwe, and I've been here for about 20 years. I think my initial food choices when I arrived here were based on just being unfamiliar with all the foods that were available to me, and obviously then the costs as well. What was cheap was probably what you reached out for. But I think kind of this background to my question is, you find in our supermarkets a mango from Zimbabwe quite affordable, actually. I couldn't buy a mango because it's 175 or something for two. You see peas, fresh produce from all the different parts of the world. So there's a channel there, and you talked about regulation and power. That, maybe kind of a monopoly, if you like.
Yeah.
Based on that, I find that over time I've needed to bring food from Zimbabwe and arrive with it in my bag. So is there room there to be more inclusive in terms of what we bring into the country? So, for instance, I'm advocating for COVID-style testing, rather than just stamping all the food that's from abroad because it's diseased. Is it possible to have a space there where you can actually, the way we test for illicit drugs, the way we test for things that we want
Do you apply the same to food?
Could we just do the same with food? Because
Amelia, have you ever come
I have
across it?
absolutely no idea. That's completely outside my... So do you mean bringing it into the country yourself, or as in, okay.
I know in the past 2 months, I know about 3 or 4 people who brought in food, and maybe a total of about 50 kgs of people that I know that are close to me, that was actually dumped. And, but we know that things like peanut butter, things like, dried food.
And that's an awful waste, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's healthy because we know we grew up on it.
Yes.
Yeah. It's changing cultures, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Any other questions this side? Yes.
My name's Sophie. I'm Food Systems Coordinator for Belfast City Council, which is a very new position. I've only been in it 2 months, so this is great to learn what's happening and where we need to go and what we need to do. And what we have is what's a food partnership. It's been alive for the last 5 years. It's part of the Sustainable Food Places. And it's a mix of incredible talent from across Belfast. We've got over 200 members. So we're doing some great things. But what really shocked me recently was that on the 20th of January, completely under the radar, the UK launched a national security assessment, which basically showcased that the UK is completely not resilient to the shocks and stresses that are coming from those global political dynamics that I think you alluded to. Venezuela, the rise on tariffs, et cetera, et cetera. And I think somebody mentioned about COVID. And even cyber security risks we're seeing when Marks and Spencer's or Sainsbury's or Iceland get attacked. We're seeing empty shelves and people bulk buying. I was just blue sky thinking here, but to get governmental officials to buy into things that people on the ground are really doing, we've got to change the narrative. And one of those narratives is it's a national security risk that food is not on the agenda.
Completely.
And I'm wondering from your perspectives, what can we do to further that narrative that we're showcasing, that it's not just about people's health, biodiversity loss or climate loss anymore, it's actually about national security.
Okay. Helen, and then Amelia, and then we'll take one more question. So another good question?
Yeah, I think, the food system the broad food system is broken in terms of health and in terms of the environment and in terms of lots of different things. And I think when you have these geopolitical disruption, without mentioning names, I think it creates a lot of stresses in the systems because we've got this, this tariffs or whatever it is, and everyone gets very anxious that the products from their country will still have a market and the profitability and so on can be maintained. I don't know that that's going away, and I think, and I don't know what the solution to it is, but I think, it's probably part of that preparedness. I agree with you around the food security issue, and I think even in terms of in emergencies, even in things like flooding and so on, which we think just happens in other countries, but it is coming. I think we need to think about what elements of the food system here do we really need to protect, and there are things that are emergency, that are things like breastfeeding is something that we really need to protect when we have a national emergency. And that's not to say everyone should or be breastfeeding, but that, you know, that's something we need to protect, because when we start flooding with free infant formula in the middle of an emergency, the long-term effect from that is not good. But I think it's a really good point about being very aware that we're moving forward not in a stable context, but in a context that's actually quite politically unstable and quite economically unstable, and that we need to sort of plan for those things. But I don't congratulate you on your role and all your work in Belfast City Council. Sounds very exciting.
Amelia, do you...
So I think, you know, we've got this Sustainable Food Cities network, and Middlesbrough just got its gold, so I'm very proud to be part of that network. And these are really motivated individuals, whereas if we look politically, talking about this crisis is not a vote winner, and everyone seems to be thinking about short-term wins and not that longer term, although, you know, we have now lived through, you know, cost of living crisis, it's ongoing. This is to do with that sustainability, and I don't have answers, but I think there is something around having the responsibility for food with the department, and we have been calling, you know, that has been called for, and we don't have it. And you know, we need to focus that, and it's broad at the minute. It sits across agriculture, education, health. That's why getting coherence around food is so challenging, whilst, you know, we have amazing organisations that do that, and this is a good example of pulling that together and pulling together the narrative from the ground up. We now need a bit more listening ears at the up bit.
And with people like you about, and Claire and others, I think we have a very optimistic future. So, Ciaran, Amelia, Jenny, your name all
fine.
day
Helen
has just bugged me. Helen, thank you very much. It's been a great chat.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.